I don't know what you say at this point, right? 2.5 or 2 hours of just great speeches from folks saying things that are so important for us to hear and digest and think about. And so, like some of the others, I'm just going to throw the notes away. And instead of what's there, I'm going to go off these 4 pages that I've kind of scratched as I've listened to other people share their experiences about where we are and what we're doing. But I do want to, first of all, acknowledge that we're in Treaty 6 land, and we're on Treaty 6 land. And I was happy to be able to share this stage with Chief Felix Thomas. He's a good friend and a good person, and I'm glad that he was able to share his time with us, as well as I'm honored to be here with such great representatives and passionate people about the issues and the causes that we're struggling for. One of the things that I've been asked to talk a little bit about is some of the similarities that we see in the way that we are being treated by our government. And I think that the labor movement is really identified by government as a target. And I think that the common thread runs through the presentations that we've heard. And I don't want to be too negative, but I want to share with you what some of the experiences that the labor movement has had at the hands of governments that see us as being a voice that they're not interested in hearing. Labor has a long and supportive partnership with the Council of Canadians. And as you can see, as you saw, one of the major sponsors of this event was the Canadian Union of Public Employees and also Unifor. But some of us go back a long time and have walked many picket lines with Maud and been tear-gassed with her in cities such as Quebec City and Montreal and elsewhere. And so it's been a long struggle. And we have achieved much, while the job that we do is sometimes overwhelming and sometimes frustrating, and sometimes it feels like we're not making the kind of progress that we need to make. Is if we weren't doing it, no one would be. And so it's important for us to continue to advocate and push for rights and to be those voices that government doesn't want to hear. We're just some of the similarities that I see is that the governments who are being controlled by the same corporations that have been identified in the theme tonight, extreme energy, have been extremely aggressive in pushing back against voices that they can't control. And so you see them bringing in legislative initiatives that attempt to strip away the voice of independent organizations. And we're seeing that constantly in this country, in this province, around issues that are important to working men and women, and that is their rights. Their constitutional rights to form organizations of their own choosing for the purposes of bargaining collectively with their employer. Unions are the only vehicle that workers have to counterbalance the power that exists in the relationship between the worker and the employer. And the employer doesn't control that. And so government is, at the behest of corporations, pushing back against those that the corporations see as interfering with their ability to run their business and to extract the kind of profits that they want. And they're applying that same kind of approach in a response to silencing the voices of other groups and individuals who are challenging the status quo, who are challenging that the government should only listen to one singular voice. And so we've seen it. We've seen it with Idle No More. We've seen it with the Occupy movement. We've seen it time and time again with pushback of people's popular movements against governments who are only listening to one source for their direction. So government is dismissive of alternative voices and alternative perspectives. And so when we're fighting these battles and when we're struggling to have our voice heard, we know that that's the uphill battle that we have to overcome. But there is something that we can learn from each other's struggles, and it's important that we do that. And that is that persistence and that honesty and that integrity, and pushing back against governments who would strip away the rights of every citizen is what's needed to try and balance that power relationship and do the things that we need to do to provide for our families. You know, the labor movement is a bit conflicted in this discussion around extreme energy. We have people in this room and in our membership who work in the energy sectors. And so I can say without too much fear of contradiction that the organizations that represent those workers are on board for a clean and sustainable environment. And I know that the affiliates that represent workers in the energy sector have called for a just transition to get away from our growing dependence on fossil fuels, because the outcome of a ever-growing dependence on fossil fuels will eliminate the existence of us on this planet. And so while we currently earn our living, or some of us earn our living in that sector, we know that it's not sustainable. And the way that we get there is by engaging in a conversation. And that's the one other thing that the current governments in power, both provincially, federally, and municipally in a lot of instances, are not prepared to engage. They're not prepared to engage in a dialogue that has a multitude of voices or a kaleidoscope of opinions. And that's because they only want to listen to the one sector who is lining their pockets. And you can't develop good public policy as a government when you only listen to a singular voice. So we have lots of work to do, and we have to the best of our ability, share our experiences and work and reach out in coalitions with other like-minded groups. And while it sometimes feels as though the objective is far from our reach, it's not. And I kind of liked how Maud started the evening out by talking about hope and about good stories. And she talked about the fact that in Canada we hold very dearly and very close our public health care system. And we will have to continue to fight to win that battle every opportunity that we get. And in 2014, we're going to have to do what we can to ensure that our public health system doesn't go the way that the people like Stephen Harper would have it if they could. We've also had tremendous victories, as Maud has suggested and outlined in the fight for the Free Trade Agreement of the Americas, the one that didn't get done, and the multilateral agreement on trade that also didn't get done. But we have a federal government, and Stephen Harper announced it today, who has signed the CETA, an agreement in principle. And on Tuesday, the Prime Minister is going to table that agreement in principle in the House of Commons. And the objective is, of course, to change the channel away from the scandal that currently is besetting the government in the Senate, and the implications that has for Stephen Harper. So we look at this country, we look at the pushback against people's movements, the kinds of fights and struggles that we need to have, and if we don't do it, then we can expect more election fraud. We can expect more institutions like the Canadian Wheat Board to be undermined and destroyed. We can't expect governments to continue to oppose human rights and water as an international human rights, like was the embarrassment of our federal government who stood opposed to that. We can expect more scandals in the Senate. We can expect more fraud in the PMO. We can expect more environmental degradation. You know that under this current federal government, we used to have 1 million lakes and streams protected. Now we have hundreds, if hundreds. And it is in the interests of extreme energy. It's in the interests of pandering to the corporate agenda that would put all of our environment, our society, at risk in the pursuit of money and profits. And so we need to push back. And we have examples of where we've been successful. One of them was identified, and it is no tribute to me in any way, shape, or form. It's a tribute to the tremendous work of others in the labor movement who fought hard to push back against the Sask Party's 2 pieces of signature legislation that they introduced when they first were elected, Bills 5 and 6. The Bill 5 was the Essential Services Law that was ruled to be unconstitutional by the Saskatchewan Court of Queen's Bench. That was ultimately not upheld at the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal, but we have recently been granted leave from the Supreme Court of Canada, and so in 2014 it is our expectation that we will be in front of the Supreme Court of Canada arguing that right has been violated by the provincial government, and hope that the Supreme Court of Canada rules that the right to engage in a job action in pursuit of your economic rights in the workplace and the workplace democracy and economic democracy is something that is protected by our charter. So we've had those kinds of small victories, and we can see that we can push back, and when we push back, we achieve those things that we need to achieve. But the key is to push back together. Because if we're all pushing back only in our own individual silos, then we become marginalized. And so we have great examples of people who have pushed back. Lois, in her opening comments, talked about pushing back and standing in front of big machinery and ending up arrested. And Maud has a multitude of experiences pushing back, and I think that probably saw a few agent provocateurs in her time, along with others in the trade union movement. Josh has been pushing back against fracking and doing great things in film, and has been recognized for that. And of course, Erica, at 23 years old, has been pushing back against some of the injustices that she's experienced in her very short life. And the labor movement has been pushing back. And so if we all push back together, and if we all raise those things that are important to us in a free and democratic society, and stand up for each other, and support each other, and build the kind of society that we will be proud to hand to the next generations, to our children, then we will be successful. And so I'm delighted to be here. I'm looking forward to the rest of the conference and spend some time. I thank you for the opportunity, and sisters and brothers and friends, we can achieve great things, but the way that we achieve great things is by working together. Thank you very much.